Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor, the podcast. I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Kayla. Hey.
And we are so thrilled that you decided to stop by this week. This week we were talking about the challenges of long-distance friendships. And some of you may have spent the entirety of your life growing up in one town or near that one town, and so you don't know really what it's like to have long-distance friendships. Well, never fear, because if you ever find yourself in a position where you have a long distance friend, we are going to go over some of the challenges that you might experience, as well as some of the things to overcome those challenges.
Right. And I think Danielle and I are going to have different perspectives on this, because personally, I've never had a best friend move away, or I moved away from a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the most similar situation I've had like that is when I was 10, and my friend and I wrote letters back and forth to each other because we did not have phones.
And
so that was kind of cute.
That's so cute.
She moved to Berkeley. So there's that. But in my adult years, I haven't really experienced that, but I do have some long distance friends. They wouldn't fall into my close friends or best friend tiers of my friendship pyramid. So I'm interested to hear some of the different perspectives.
Yeah, and I know we've touched on this on the podcast before, but obviously I moved across the country when I was 16. It was like a whole brand new start to life. I didn't really realize it at the time, but looking back over the last 10, 11 years, I realized how big of an impact that had on me. And so I can speak from personal experience about these challenges, and hopefully along this journey, you will learn something. So we're going to kick it off with number one. I would say this is probably the primary challenge. I mean, there's a lot of different challenges, but this one to me is the thing that probably affected the most friendships, is lack of face-to-face interaction. When you go from spending the weekend at each other's houses every single week in, week out, to now living across the country from each other, it's tough. Not being able to see your friends in person is tough. And we're going to talk about technology and stuff and how that plays a role in maintaining long distance friendships. But face-to-face interaction is something that's so vital to friendship building. And so when you don't have that, you're losing that ability to build a strong connection. And the digital, even though technology is so incredible these days, you still lose something in the distance. So without regular face-to-face contact, friendships can sometimes fade or become less meaningful over time.
Yeah, I think this is part of the reason a lot of relationships and friendships kind of went downhill during COVID. And of course, student learning, that went downhill during COVID, because face-to-face is, there are some things you cannot offer digitally that you can offer face-to-face. So.
Yeah, and as a virtual teacher now, even post-COVID, I can see how the lack of ability between online students and in-person students, coming from the physical classroom last year into a virtual classroom this year, there's a difference because you don't have that personal interaction all the time. And so face-to-face interaction in friendship building or any sort of social connection, it's just very, very difficult to replace with digital communication, even though that's come so far. The second challenge we're going to talk about today is time zone difference. Now, I have some very, very recent experience with this. As you, Kayla, you know, and maybe some of you listeners know, I had a friend who spent, 2.5 years in the Middle East working with the school. And that was so difficult to navigate. those time zones, because it's one thing if your friend is 3 hours ahead and they're up slightly earlier or they go to bed slightly earlier. Until you are 9, sometimes 10 hours difference, it's night and day, quite literally night and day.
Yeah.
And so between her schedule and my schedule, when I was going to bed on Saturday night, she was waking up for church. So it's quite literally night and day, and navigating a time zone difference can be like such a challenge for long distance
Right.
friendships. And like I said, we're going to get into some ways of managing these challenges, but just to be able to put a label on them and to identify them is one step closer to helping you navigate them. And that's true for any sort of conflict or any sort of challenge. If you can identify what the challenge is, instead of it being some faceless, nameless giant you're facing, if you're able to identify it, you're more easily able to navigate that situation. The third one kind of goes along with this time zone difference, communication barriers. So depending on your digital communication, which text calls, video chats, FaceTime, Skype, whatever, can lead to misunderstandings or interpretation and tone and insight. So say
Yeah.
you finally worked out a time to be able to video, FaceTime with your friend, and you got a spotty connection and it's breaking up, and you thought she said something that you hadn't actually said, and then there's contention or there's confusion or
Right.
something, and you just got communication barriers, and you would not have that as frequently if you were able to have a physical touch point now and again, face to face, and be able to explain what you meant. And it just could
Right.
be, it's just a challenge. That's what it's what it boils down to. It's a challenge.
Right. And between text calls and video chats is probably the safest one if you want to avoid misinterpretations or
Mhm.
misunderstandings. But yeah, even then, they can't read your body language. There are connection issues, and yeah, it presents big hurdles for those long distance friendships where you're dependent on FaceTime.
Yeah, and internet etiquette is such a weird thing to navigate too, because
Yeah.
first of all, if you're super good friends, which we typically are talking from that standpoint of super good friends, even a text without an emoji could come across the wrong way. I actually showed a video to my students this morning about internet etiquette because they're 12, they're sixth graders, and they have no concept of how dumb or disrespectful they sound in like chats and stuff like that. So I showed them a video. I'm like, guys, the
Oh,
way
they
you
need
speak,
that.
yeah, they do. And because it was causing conflicts in like the chat feature of our classroom and that kind of thing. I'm like, you can't
Oh
just
no.
say something the way you can't type something the way you would say it, because your tone does not come through, your joking mannerisms don't come through. I have a kid who, she's always like, can we play a game or whatever? And so she types out like 6 times and then 12 question marks, and it sounds so irritating and disrespectful, and she could just be like, can we play a game, can we play a game? That could be what she's saying, but that's not what it comes
Right.
across as. So if you've got that already working, or if you've got distance already working against you, and then you've got tonal issues working against you, you're just asking for conflict. So communication barriers are such a challenge. And like you said, FaceTime, Skype, all that stuff, Zoom is a better option, but it still is not the same as that closeness,
Mhm.
community, next door neighbor, that kind of vibe. So let's say that you really miss your friend and you need some face to face time, and they live somewhere, we'll use bi-coastal for, just our purposes today. So East Coast, West Coast. It could be the next state over. Your long distance friend could be an hour away instead of, 3 days away by train or flight or whatever. So we're not saying that one type of long distance is harder than another, but for our purposes today, we'll talk about East Coast, West Coast. So say you've got a friend who moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, and you're like, I need to see her. It's been too long, and I need a face to face. I need a weekend. I need a week with her, whatever. Here's another challenge. How about the stinking high costs of traveling these days? It can be so expensive. And the financial
Rough.
aspect could be a barrier for so many people who have long distance friends. And I know this might sound like a Debbie Downer podcast episode where we're just talking about all the bad stuff, but it's important, like I said, to identify these challenges so you understand what you could possibly be facing in the future. So, Kayla, you work with Bible quizzers, and I know that you guys travel to meets and competition a lot. How do you
Yeah.
find the experience of having, and I know you're not simply going for friendships, but you've made friendships along the way, so we can address this,
Hmm.
but that's got to be a pain, It seems like it's kind of frequent to have to
Yeah.
like the travel wears on you, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's every month. And it is a strain on us and the quizzers, although we do tell them, hey, the Bible quizzing account will pay your way if you qualify at this percentage, and that's some incentive. But yeah, it is a huge strain, not only financially, but just every month, pausing your life on Friday and Saturday, giving up your whole weekend, putting miles on your car.
Right.
Just there's so much that goes into it.
So not only does like cost, play a role, but the actual exhaustion of getting from one place to another, one coast to another. In 2018, that was probably my highest like highest frequency of traveling year to date. So in 12 months I went like 10 places or something like that. And between January and March, I flew like 6 times, 7 times, something like that. It was outrageous. And by the third one, I was like, bleh. Like I was standing in the boarding area for Southwest, because you know how you have to, it's general seating or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? And I love traveling. So the cost of going to see your friend is definitely a part of it. It's outrageous cost these days. But say you have a long weekend, you've got 5 days with your friend. The first day, you're trying to adjust to their schedule. You're on the other side of the country. If if you flew in that night, you'll want to sleep in a little bit. And so you've got a jam-packed
Yeah.
weekend together where you're tired from traveling the whole time. So
Right.
another challenge to be aware of.
Insert random but cute story. My niece and nephew just learned the term jet lag because they went to Japan. And the day after they got back from Japan, they were back at school. They were still suffering from jet lag. And so they were telling their mom, I'm tired, I'm tired. So she finally like taught them what jet lag meant. And it's just so cute to hear them say, I'm jet lagged from Japan. Auntie K, I'm jet lagged.
Because what other 5-year-old knows A, what jet lag is, and has actually genuinely experienced it because they've
And
been to Japan.
yeah, 16-hour time difference.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
so
so
yeah, it
funny.
takes a toll on you.
Which actually brings up a very good segue into our next one, because as you are, as time goes on, and especially if your friend moves away because they got married or something, different life stages, like life is going to move on in those two separate zones that you're in, two separate physical locations. So
Hmm.
if your friend got married, or and has kids or whatever, and so it seems like life is just going on, you might miss life events which can lead to you growing apart, or difficulty in relating to each other's experiences. So I have a friend that 10 years ago when we moved, she didn't have any kids. Now she's got three. She's been married for 12 years. And like, I don't even really have any relationship with those kids. Where as if we had never moved, I would feel like I'd be highly involved in those kids' lives. So not only are we in different life stages, but she now has so much more invested in a familial sense that I have no part of. So we've kind of grown apart. And it's not pleasant to think about. And we do our best to try to stay in contact. But when your friend becomes a long distance friend when they weren't before, their life is heading in a different direction. And instead of growing parallel side by side as their life, one thing happens, it tilts. And then 10 years in the future,
Hmm.
where you were here, and I'm sorry for the listeners on Apple or Spotify, you can't see this example, but I'm holding up two
That is
parallel
cute little
fingers.
visual.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you get a free visual lesson as well. But what started off as parallel lives growing in one spot, one life ticks and had just one degree with marriage or kids or whatever, and then 10 years later you're now this far apart, and in
Right.
your lives, which
Yeah.
would have been seemingly trucking along at the same pace, is now spread far and wide by time, by distance, by different life stages, which also leads to, as time passes on, limited shared experience, which is our sixth challenge. That
Mhm.
joke that happened 20 years ago that has sustained you for the last 15 or 20 years that you've been apart is the only joke that you have to go on since you've been separated,
Right.
because you've not been able to make the same memories that you would at the same pace.
Hmm. And not that you have to build your relationship on inside jokes, but those shared experiences are one of like the core elements of bonding.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that in the friendship pyramid episode and in the episode with Krissa. Um, I mean, those shared experiences, yeah, is one of the main elements. So those are going to be really limited when you're long distance. And so that's going to play a role in how your friendship develops.
Yeah. And it's going to seem like you talk about the same stories every time you get together, but what you're doing is you're relating back to the only thing you have to relate about anymore, especially if you're in different
Hmm.
life stages. So I know that there are several families that my family were very close to and still are close to. And, if we see them once a year, once every other year, whatever, we are always talking about what happened in what other people would consider the good old days, but it was really just, in the past. Everyone considers what happened before to be the prime of their life, and often realize that they're not even in
Yeah.
what is actually the prime of their life. And you'll look back 10 years to this moment and be like, oh man, why didn't no one tell me I was in the prime of my life? Well, because you were too busy dwelling on the past. But I digress. There is a video about that on YouTube, by the way, if you if you need to dive into that topic further.
Yes.
Um, it's called The Good Old Days Are Now. But if you if you find yourself in that situation, it's because you now had limited shared experience. Because the times that you spent separated, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, and the distance has not helped you strengthen your relationship. At this point, you are trying to maintain it by all your communication and that kind of thing. And again, I don't want you to think like, oh, this is such a downer episode. It's not. I've actually got a very cute story coming up about people who have sustained long distance friendships. But if we don't navigate the challenges, you won't be able to appreciate the good stuff as we move
Yeah.
on. Number 7, loneliness and isolation. This kind of goes along with the other side of a long distance friendship. So from we've been talking from the perspective of you who stayed in the same spot and then someone else moved away. But what if we flip it? What if you lived in the West Coast and then moved to the East Coast? So you're starting a new life, possibly you got married, possibly you went to college, or whatever reason you moved. And now not only do you not have the people that you were closest to, but now you're lonely and you're isolated. And you might miss out on participating on activities or events together that sustained you. So like we've got Rocktoberfest coming up. It's always a fun time. We
Yeah.
just had the ladies' word thing, Christmasers, whatever instances that are like annual things that you looked forward to. Being physically distant from a friend or from your community can lead to those feelings of loneliness, isolation, and it just is going to be tough to come back around and have those conversations with the people who you're friends with, if that's what they talk about and that's how they try to relate back to you, but you weren't there. And so it just could make the loneliness feel even deeper. We talked about my friend who passed away a couple weeks ago and how she lost both of her best friends in the same weekend. Um, and I never talked to her about that loneliness and isolation, but I can only speculate that it had to have been difficult, right? So, I mean, it's in the past now and I can't go back and fix it, but being aware of it now helps me. Even though it was a bad situation and a sad situation, it helps me be a better friend now because I know how to look for cases like that. So these challenges don't have to drag you down to the pit of despair. They can be a lesson. That's not a great lesson. No one wants to learn this lesson, but that's the whole point of Friendeavor is
Yeah.
that if Kayla and I can teach you something about friendship that will help you avoid the mistakes that we've made, hey, we'll have done our jobs.
Right. And that's just like any life challenge or hurdle or experiencing broken trust in a friendship, anything like that. Those things, yeah, they're hard to go through and you don't really want to go through them, but they all teach you a lesson
Mm-hmm.
and you'll end up not doing things or doing things differently down the road because you learned from that kind of situation.
And it's only going to make you a better person in the long run.
Yeah.
Getting into some more of the feelings aspect. So we talked about loneliness and isolation. Number 8, what about jealousy, envy? You
Mm-hmm.
see your friend's life progressing, what seems through like a lens, maybe a telescope, as if you look at a telescope and you flip it around and now you're looking at the large end, looking down at the small end, it looks like something so far away is happening faster and life is moving
Mm-hmm.
faster and those life events are happening. And what if things are happening and it seems like they're achieving more than you, but you can't celebrate with them and you can't be in their life and you can't encourage them and you can't see the challenges they went through up to get to that point, up close and personal. And so it could spark jealousy or envy,
Right.
which is not going to be healthy for your friendship, and it's definitely not going to help you maintain your friendship that's already under strain because of distance.
Right. And when you're not able to be with your friends in person, face to face regularly, and all you see is social media,
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember people post highlights on their social media. It's not a
Absolutely.
bad thing. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna like on purpose go and post like a non-flattering photo of myself for the
Right.
sake of transparency.
Right.
I'm not gonna do that. But people just Instagram by nature is a platform to share the highlights of your life.
Right.
And so when you're scrolling, you have to remember that. And I think that's where a lot of people start to get really jealous and yeah, and envious.
Mm-hmm. And you have to think, okay, so they posted that they just finished their bachelor's degree and you were there during their first semester, but then you since moved away. And so 3 years later, you see that they graduated, but the last 4 or 5 semesters, you didn't see the long, lonely nights of them studying on their own. You didn't see them almost quitting. You didn't see all the dark stuff because you weren't there. And it's not your fault that you weren't there. It's life. It's a life situation. It took you away or it took them away. So if you start feeling those feelings of jealousy and envy, curb it, first of all, because
Mhm.
it's human. I mean, it's your humanity, it's your flesh. So try to bring a little bit of realism to it and think back, oh man, they have persevered so much. Put a positive thing on it. Moving on, and we're kind of cycling back to the tech issues, of being apart, is that you don't have the same level of emotional support that you need. A physical presence can be comforting. You know, if
Yeah.
you are just laying on your bed, just chilling, and your friend is like laying next to you on their phone, even though you're not having some deep, meaningful conversation, just being together is a vibe. A physical presence can be comforting. And I know some
Hmm.
people who like fall asleep with, with their FaceTime on because it's like they're doing the best they can to be together, even if they're not. But long distance friends just may not be able to provide that same level of support that a physical friend in the same room can do for you. I know that when I found out
Right.
about that friend who passed away, Kara was out doing bus ministry and Lydia was with her. And when they came home, I just gave Lydia a hug, or she gave me a hug, whatever way. And it was like, it was the physical comfort and support of knowing
Yeah.
someone was there to support you. And obviously, I was surrounded by my family too, but the physical representation of support was very meaningful in that window of time. And I just wouldn't have gotten that with a long distance friend because they physically are not here.
Right. And that's important, especially if you're a physical touch person, which not everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are, then that plays a big role in that limited emotional support.
Yeah. I think that was maybe the second or third love language thing for me. I need to go take that love languages quiz again because it's been a long time. I think I took it in my early 20s, so I'd be interested to see if things have changed since then. But like, I it's really nice for me to connect with people when I could just like, tap on the arm or slap on the back or something like that. It's not my primary love language, but it's definitely helps me feel connected to people just to be like, bro, grab their arm, like you can't believe this happened or whatever. Because it just
Yeah.
adds to the connectivity right there in the moment. All right, we got two more challenges we're going to go through. And this next one kind of goes with the example I gave earlier of the two fingers being parallel and then they kind of split off in different directions. Not only, so let's say that some big major life change didn't happen. Let's say that they did not get married, they didn't move away because they got married or had kids or whatever. They moved away because life, whatever life situation you want to put on it, I'm not going to put a label on it. It was, whatever. It was economical, anything. You plug in your reason. But over time, your interests and values may change. The parallel fingers, you're just growing apart because of separation. And the gap between you and your long distance friend could be caused by the interest change, just changes in interest. It doesn't have to be dramatic, and you could still be friends, but like we said in the friendship pyramid episode, changes in the pyramid happen because of time and space. Well, guess what? You are now physically separated from that person and you're spending less time with them. Unless you are like crazy dedicated to keeping that person on the same tier for you, they're probably going to drop a level. And again, that's not a good or a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's just a tool to help you recognize reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if they moved to an incredibly conservative community area? And so they start acting slightly different than they did when they were 15 or whatever. You can't fault them for their beliefs or values
Yeah.
changing. You can't be like, okay, that is not how you were like in high school. And so I don't know who you're becoming. Are you better than me? Are you holier than thou? Time and space, changes in
Mm-hmm.
interests. Don't let that be an extra stumbling block in what's already a difficult situation.
Right.
And then, of course, our last one, you've got unpredictable life events, unexpected life events, such as, so if you want to put a label on it, job changes, family issues, health problems, all those are reasons that you could have moved, but they're also reasons that could, once someone has moved, could disrupt your ability to maintain contact with them. Don't just assume you know what's going on in people's lives. It's up to them whether or not they share it, and don't be an extra problem for them, if that makes sense. All right, that is enough of all the Debbie Downer. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how you can attack these challenges, potentially overcome them, but ultimately do your best to maintain a strong, meaningful connection with your long distance friend. We will be right back. All right, everyone. So let's get into some ways that you can overcome these challenges of when you have a long distance friend, because it does not mean that you can't be friends with them. It just means that it's going to require a little bit more effort, not just on you, on both of you, to make sure you maintain communication, adaptability, all these things. So all that stuff. So here's some strategies to help you maintain. First of all, regular communication. Make an effort to stay in touch, whether that's phone calls,
Yeah.
like we said, video chats, FaceTime, whatever, text messages. I know it seems like it takes so much will to muster up a text to send to the person. Do it, try it. Hopefully you guys each have the patience with each other to navigate that. I had a friend who texted me actually last week while we were recording, and I forgot to reply until the next morning. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was recording. How are you?" She texted me a week later and she's like, "Don't even worry about it. It takes me 3 to 5 business days to respond." And I'm like, that is accurate. Because
Oh my
and
word.
so now she texted me that like yesterday or this morning or something. So I need to text her back, but she lives on the other side of the country. So we've got patience with each other and we'll get to it when we get to it. But we're making an effort to bridge that physical gap with
Yeah.
with a gap with a an effort of communication.
Okay, so tip number two, for strategies to help maintain and strengthen your long distance friendship is to set a schedule. So establish a regular schedule for catching up with each other. And you can do weekly video calls, you could do monthly. Um, Text should be a little more regular, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this makes it easier to plan and it ensures that you have dedicated time for each other. When you're long distance, you have to be more intentional.
Yeah.
And so, um, texting each other, it takes seconds to send a text. Be like, hey, does this date work for you? No, it doesn't work for me. Okay. So does this date work for you to call? And once you nail down a date, you have that date.
Hmm.
And that time's not going to be taken by anyone else. It's dedicated time for each other. And a good rule of thumb, I think, is every time you do call your long distance friend, in that call, set up the next time you're going to call.
Mm.
I do this with my friends that are not even long distance. Every time we hang out, we set up calendar the next time we're going to hang out because we just all have such different schedules and we're so busy
Yeah.
that we can go weeks without hanging out if we don't schedule it.
Hmm.
So scheduling it may seem like scripted or not organic, but I mean, if you want it to happen, you're going to have to be intentional.
Yeah, I think back to someone who is not long distance, who every time I see her, so like every week we're like, "Oh, we need to do something soon." And she's probably listening right now. So if you are listening, you know who you are. It's been too long since we had lunch in January. So we need to figure out a way to catch up even though you're local. Well, we did have brunch back in August, so I guess that counts too. But other people were there. So anyways, but yeah, I totally agree. Set a schedule. And that's such a great idea to do it in the moment for the next time because life will absolutely pass you by if you can't like jump on an opportunity to get it done.
Right.
Strategies 3 and 4 kind of go together, so I'm just kind of intertwine these. For your long distance friend, visit each other. That's the strategy, and then also plan future meetings, like Kayla said. So not only for like the next time you talk, but like, are you gonna go on vacation together? Are you gonna go see that person? So visit each other to your actual hometowns or whatever, and then plan or set a goal for like we would like to take a girls trip this time next year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a year or more down the road, like have something to look forward to. My friends and I took a cruise over Labor Day and we planned it back in March and it seemed like it would never come, but we kept telling each other, 80 days till the cruise, 56 days till the cruise. Oh my word, the cruise is next month. 3 weeks, 2 weeks, this weekend. And so even us
That's
locally,
fun.
we're counting down. So how much the more would that be a bond and an easy opening to a text to say, 200 days until the girls trip or something like that. So planning to see each other,
Right.
actually making a goal to go and travel to see them, and then planning future trips or meetings or whatever together, even if it's a conference. If you always go to the same conferences, text each other, I'll see you at this conference, can't wait for youth conference, can't wait for you camp meeting or whatever. You have something to look forward to and in that moment when you are able to have a physical reconnection, guess what? You're now maintaining a strong connection and creating lasting memories that you're not able to long distance.
Tip number 5 is embracing technology. It can be annoying, but if you want to maintain that long distance friendship, then you're going to have to embrace that technology.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many apps that are not just texting, it's not just calling, and it's not just FaceTiming. Things that you can do that's different and fun and entertaining. Um, I know there's Marco Polo. I've used that to talk to my family before. Um, we don't really use it anymore. Now our family group chat just blows up every day. But Marco Polo, if you guys haven't heard of it, um, it's basically you're sending videos back and forth to each other, but it's through this app. And
It's like video
you can,
texting kind of, right?
yeah, like video texting. You can even interrupt someone mid video and start your own video. So you can watch them record their video live. Um, so that's kind of cool. Marco Polo is a great one. There's also, of course, Instagram, staying connected to your friends through Instagram. And of course, like we already talked about, it's not the best depiction of reality. Um, and then there's Be Real, Locket. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Locket.
I love
Um,
Be Real, but I've never heard of Walk It. What is that?
oh, okay. So, Locket you can get as a widget on your phone, and basically, and only people in your contacts can friend you. And I mean, it's basically just like a photo sharing platform. You can only share videos that are like 6 seconds long. You can only add captions that are like, it gives you a word count for captions, so you can't add super long captions. And it's basically just more real and raw than Instagram.
Aw.
Um, and I have friends that use it as like their spam account, so they'll like post 10 times a day on Locket. It's kind of annoying, but yeah, that's basically what Locket is. And if you add it as a widget on your phone, then when you open your home screen, you see your friends' photos throughout the day pop up on your home screen.
Oh, that's
So
cute. So it keeps them like fresh in your
yeah,
mind. You
yeah,
can't be like,
yeah, it's
oh man,
cute.
I haven't thought of them in days when you literally just saw them when you went to go check Instagram because they popped up on your home screen before you even got to Instagram.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun one. And then for those who don't know what Be Real is, it's become one of my favorites. Um, Basically, it's this app where the notification goes off at the same time every day for everybody. And you have 2 minutes to take a photo of what you're doing. And it takes a photo from both the front camera and back camera. So um, I think the idea, whoever created it, the idea was like transparency and
Uh-huh.
realness. Um, there are ways to kind of like rig it so
Guilty.
it's not actually taking a photo of the yes. and then and then they made this feature where like you can post a late be real. So like you can be staged if you want to, because you're
Yeah,
not posting within the 2 minutes. So
but you're defeating the
but the
purpose
idea is kind of cool.
at me, defeating the purpose. Hey, if I know I got a good event coming up that night, you best believe I'm gonna skip it. But they did
You're
incentivize
skipping
it.
it.
They did incentivize where if you post within the 2 minutes, you get an extra chance to post during the day. So I will do that too. Like if I hit it
Yeah.
in the zone, the time zone, I'll still post my regular one, but I'd like to share what I'm being real with if I'm at a concert or with friends or whatever. So yeah, I love that app
Hmm.
too.
Little fun ways to stay connected.
Yeah. There's definitely, and there's so many. There's so many. So I'm sure there's tons that we don't know about that you guys do know about. So you can email us friendeavorpodcast@gmail.com and we would love to hear about what you come up with. And of course, if you're not following the Friendeavor Instagram, you need to get on that because we got amazing content too.
Hmm.
All right, number 6, a way to overcome these challenges is be understanding. I touched on it at the end of our challenges section. Recognize that life events, time zones, ups and downs of life, all that stuff can affect your friend's availability. Now, it'll be very clear if they're blowing you off. That's a different situation. That's a different topic. That's a different podcast. We'll deal with that another time. But be understanding if your friend cannot respond to you immediately. This is something that I struggled with when I was a young teenager, even like 15, 16, not even young teenager, just the whole teenager area time, is that when people were in different life stages, I was like, oh, bro, why are you not responding to me? We're trying to have a conversation. Well, they've got life. And now, as someone who
Yeah.
has life, who didn't have it at 15 or 16, I'm like, I get out of
Yeah.
work, I'm in a class for 45 minutes. Check my phone and I've got 35 text messages from 8 different group chats. Like, it's not
Right.
because I'm so popular, it's because people are just blowing up the chat for whatever reason. So if I'm not responding to them, they need to be understanding of me, knowing that, hey, they're not always available. And I need to be understanding of my friends. They're not always going to be available when I immediately reach out.
Right. Yeah, it's all about being flexible too. You and your friend are going to have different communication styles, different texting styles. One of the things that I had to adjust to when I first started dating Brett was the different texting styles between our families. My family group chat, we all want to take time to text a thoughtful response with all these emojis. Okay. So if like with my family, if we don't have time in that moment when we get the text to send the thoughtful reply we want to send, then we're going to wait till hours later when we're off work and we can like sit down and text that.
Mhm.
Whereas Brett's family group chat, like if someone texts the group chat, most of the time within 2 minutes, everyone has replied. And that's just like the difference is like you guys value like instant text back and my family values the content of the message,
That is
rather
so
than the
funny.
turnaround time.
No, we want an
So
immediate response and we want you to acknowledge that you saw whatever we said and then boom, it's over. And then you don't have to think about it anymore. Whatever
yeah.
whatever was sent, you deal with it, you get it over with, good or bad, and then you move on with your day. That is
Right.
hilarious.
So you have to recognize that with your friends too. Um, I mean, one friend might be the wait until 7 p.m. to check all my texts friend, and the one friend might be the like, I'm gonna get them as they come.
Yeah, that is so true. If you have concerns about your friend's availability, like I said, it is another podcast, but we wouldn't be Friendeavor if we didn't touch on it. You got to share your feelings and concerns with your friends. Be honest. Like, I'm sad that we have not had a phone call in a month. Can you please make time for me? You don't have to be a wine bag about it. Be understanding, but also don't be afraid to share your feelings about it. Again, that will help prevent misunderstandings. If you're texting all the time and then you drop in a comment about having never hear from them, well, that could be like, what do you mean we text all the time? What do you mean you don't hear from me? And then you got resentment. So be honest, be communicative. Don't expect that your friends are mind readers and they're just going to know your needs and help, call you at any point when you're feeling low because you just expect them to read your mind. Not how that works. Another way is celebrating milestones even from a distance, birthdays, anniversaries, achievements, thoughtful gestures, or as we saw during COVID, virtual parties. Not a fan of those, but if it works for you, great. And this is where I get to plug in my cute story. Actually, so this tip is celebrate milestones, and our next one is send surprise gifts. These two kind of lump in together, and so this is where I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze in my cute story. My sisters got a very, very good friend, a best friend, who they, grew up together, and they have maintained a very, very strong, healthy friendship from, you know, miles, 2,000 miles apart. They still celebrate each other's milestones. They still sent, like, Kara just sent her flowers the other day, all random,
Mm.
and that made her friend's day. And I know the friend has sent her stuff because I've collected the packages from the mail guy before. So you're not buying their affection, but you're sending a surprise gift. You're showing a support. I know that I think when Kara
Yeah.
graduated from college, her friend may have sent her a gift. And then the friend is expecting a baby, and then Kara is sending her gifts. So you don't have
Mhm.
to go broke, but a nice surprise gift celebrating or a just because will really help keep the connectivity between you two.
Right. You do what you can.
Yeah. And to tag on to the last one, because a bunch of these challenges or the overcomings of the challenges kind of just flow together. So instead of saying number one, number two, it's kind of just going to flow because
Yeah.
you'll see that they all kind of flow together. But staying involved in their life, keep up with what's happening in your friend life, share your experience and let them share their experience. The reason that Kara and her friend are able to still be as close is because they talk about what's going on in their lives, and they have the benefit of knowing people, each other's families and that kind of thing, to be able to like, oh yeah, my sister is doing this and whatever. The happy moments and keeping up with what's going on as if nothing has ever changed. Right? They are intentional about being there for each other and supporting each other, emotional support, trusting that the other person still wants to be a part of their life. That's a big thing about overcoming challenges, is trusting each other, not in the sense of like, oh, they betrayed me or that kind of thing, but trusting that you're still important to them, and that even more so in a long distance relationship, that your friendship is essential. It's going to help you stay engaged and interested um in each other's feelings and values and that kind of thing. Another way to overcome those challenges is to still maintain your own interests. You don't have to get into what other people are doing just to be like them, because that will also give you content to be able to share with them of your life. And then, of course,
Hmm.
maybe take up a mutual hobby at different, in different distances, and you can compare your experiences. Say you guys have always been interested in crocheting or something like that. What if you each took a crochet class in your respective towns and then got on FaceTime and chatted while you taught each other what you learned in crochet class or whatever? These are just ideas, but
So sweet.
maintain your own interests, get a shared interest. It like either way, you're gonna have things to talk about.
Hmm.
If you are one of those people who moved away and you are the long distance friend, you can make, meet new people locally, make an effort to kind of ease up that isolation and loneliness, establish
Yeah.
local friendships to help you fill that void. Obviously, that's not going to help you maintain your current friendships, but it will give you an outlet that you don't have anymore with your other friend. And you might end up meeting someone who
Right.
becomes a lifelong friend. And then when your
Mhm.
old friend comes to town, you've got new and old meeting. It's a connection, east meets west, that kind of thing. I know that when Brett's
Right.
childhood best friend came to visit, he and Brett's very close friend now met and they hit it off. And now they're like pretty good
Yeah.
friends. And so you don't have to just be us four no more or us one no more with your friends.
Hmm.
Help create a connection between people who never ever would have met had you not been the person who was the go-between.
Right. And it's not replacing to like push yourself out there and make new friendships.
Absolutely.
It's not replacing your old
Mm-mm.
ones. Um, Specifically for long distance friendships, it's filling a void that your long distance friends cannot fill
Right.
as hard as you try to. And like if you follow all these tips and do all the things, there are things that your long distance friends won't be able to do for you that your local friends can.
Yeah. So true. And our last tip or strategy or whatever you want to call it is just adapt to the changing circumstances. As sad as it is, and Kayla just touched on this, as sad as it is that you two are no longer physically close, and as difficult as it is, because you probably are going to grieve a little bit about that, I would assume. Obviously you're going to do your dead level best to maintain and strengthen that bond, but it's different now. So just adapt, take these strategies, take these tips, and see what works for your situation. As your life change, as your friend life change, be flexible, adapt. And how you maintain, there might be a season of your life where be real is the best way you get to see each other's face, but then another season you are able to fly to see each other once a month or do multiple trips. Be adaptable, be flexible. Different life stages may require different adjustments for your relationship, but if you remember and you keep the focus that maintaining a long distance friendship takes effort for both people, you'll be able to prioritize your connection, have patience with each other, be adaptable, and ensure that your strong connection will endure challenges and time and space and all that kind of stuff, as long as you are putting in the time and attention it deserves. And only you can determine what it deserves. No one can tell you how much time and energy you should put into something, because only your desire is going to be able to drive that. If you want to maintain a strong, meaningful connection with that person, you will work for it. It's how it is in any relationship. Well, that is all for episode 12. Thank you so much for stopping by Friendeavor the podcast this week. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Share this episode with a friend. You got a long distance friend? Guess what? We just dropped the perfect way for you to connect with them. Send them a new text, send them this
Yes.
link, listen to this podcast together, see if you learn something.
Hmm.
Don't forget, if you got questions, comments, go ahead and reach out to us, friendeavorpodcast@gmail.com. Leave us a review. You know the drill. Rate us 5 stars
Yep.
if you want to see a 5-star smile on our faces.
DM us.
DM us. Absolutely. In the next couple weeks, we're hoping to have another surprise guest. We will let you know when that is dropping. But for right now, we appreciate you stopping by. Have a fantastic rest of your week, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.